A good commander is benevolent and unconcerned with fame. Confront them with annihilation, and they will then survive. Plunge them into a deadly situation, and they will then live. When people fall into danger, they are then able to strive for victory. The enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. There has never been a protracted war from which a country has benefited. For to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and you know earth, you may make your victory complete. When envoys are sent with compliments in their mouths, it is a sign that the enemy wishes for a truce. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight, even though the ruler forbid it. If fighting will not result in victory, then you must not fight even at the ruler's bidding. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without disaster. The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. The general who wins the battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses makes but few calculations beforehand. To see victory only when it is within the ken of the common herd is not the acme of excellence. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Secret operations are essential in war. Upon them the army rallies to make its every move. Prohibit the taking of omens, and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. Thus it is that in war the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. Of all those in the army close to the commander, none is more intimate than the secret agent. Of all rewards, none more liberal than those given to secret agents. Of all matters, none is more confidential than those relating to secret operations. Above all things, reverence yourself. Concern should drive us into action and not into depression. No man is free who cannot control himself. There is a good principle which created order, light, and man, and an evil principle which created chaos, darkness, and woman. Friends are as companions on a journey, who ought to aid each other to persevere in the road to a happier life. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. The oldest, shortest words yes and no are those which require the most thought. Above the cloud with its shadow is the star with its light. Above all things reverence thyself. It is better whether to be silent or to say things of more value than silence. Sooner throw a pearl at hazard than an idle or useless word. And do not say a little in many words, but a great deal in a few. Strength of mind rests in sobriety, for this keeps your reason unclouded by passion. Begin thus from the first act, and proceed. And, in conclusion, at the ill which thou hast done, be troubled, and rejoice for the good. The most momentous thing in human life is the art of winning the soul to good or evil. As soon as laws are necessary for men, they are no longer fit for freedom. Anger begins with folly and ends with repentance. Beings have a soul. Choose rather to be strong of soul than strong of body. No one is free who has not obtained the empire of himself. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Love and work, work and love, that's all there is. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of a lasting existence. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. Flowers are restful to look at. They have neither emotions nor conflicts. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the preferably sudden satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. Every normal person, in fact, is only normal on the average. His ego approximates to that of the psychotic in some part or other and to a greater or lesser extent. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. Men are strong so long as they represent a strong idea, they become powerless when they oppose it. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent. But those organs have not grown on him and they still give him much trouble at times. Civilized society is perpetually menaced with disintegration through this primary hostility of men towards one another. Obviously, one must hold oneself responsible for the evil impulses of one's dreams. In what other way can one deal with them, unless the content of the dream, rightly understood, is inspired by alien spirits? It is part of my own being. Neurotics complain of their illness, but they make the most of it. And when it comes to talking it away from them, they will defend it like a lioness her young. Just as a cautious businessman avoids investing all his capital in one concern, so wisdom would probably admonish us also not to anticipate all our happiness from one quarter alone. It is impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Civilization began the first time an angry person cast a word instead of a rock. I cannot think of any need in childhood as strong as the need for a father's protection. Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. The great question that has never been answered, and which I have not yet been able to answer, despite my 30 years of research into the feminine soul, is what does a woman want? I have found little that is good about human beings on the whole. In my experience, most of them are trash. No matter whether they publicly subscribe to this or that ethical doctrine or to none at all. That is something that you cannot say aloud, or perhaps even think. If a man has been his mother's undisputed darling, he retains throughout life the triumphant feeling, the confidence in success, which not seldom brings actual success along with it. The conscious mind may be compared to a fountain playing in the sun and falling back into the great subterranean pool of subconscious from which it rises. He that has eyes to see and ears to hear may convince himself that no mortal can keep a secret. If his lips are silent, he chatters with his fingertips. Betrayal oozes out of him at every pore. A man should not strive to eliminate his complexes, but to get into accord with them. They are legitimately what directs his conduct in the world. The act of birth is the first experience of anxiety, and thus the source and prototype of the affect of anxiety. Modern science says, the sun is the past, the earth is the present, the moon is the future. From an incandescent mass we have originated, and into a frozen mass we shall turn. Merciless is the law of nature, and rapidly and irresistibly we are drawn to our doom. Let the future tell the truth, and evaluate each one according to his work and accomplishments. The present is theirs. The future, for which I have really worked, is mine. It is paradoxical, yet true, to say that the more we know, the more ignorant we become in the absolute sense. For it is only through enlightenment that we become conscious of our limitations. Precisely one of the most gratifying results of intellectual evolution is the continuous opening up of new and greater prospects. Every living being is an engine geared to the wheelwork of the universe, though seemingly affected only by its immediate surrounding. The sphere of external influence extends to infinite distance. I do not think there is any thrill that can go through the human heart like that felt by the inventor as he sees some creation of the brain unfolding to success. Such emotions make a man forget food, sleep, friends, love, everything. The scientists of today think deeply instead of clearly. One must be sane to think clearly, but one can think deeply and be quite insane. As in nature, all is ebb and tide, all is wave motion. So it seems that in all branches of industry, alternating currents to electric wave motion will have the sway. As in nature, all is ebb and tide, all is wave motion. So it seems that in all branches of industry, alternating currents to electric wave motion will have the sway. The scientific man does not aim at an immediate result. He does not expect that his advanced ideas will be readily taken up. His work is like that of the planter for the future. His duty is to lay the foundation for those who are to come, and point the way. The year 2100 will see eugenics universally established. In past ages, the law governing the survival of the fittest roughly weeded out the less desirable strains. Then man's new sense of pity began to interfere with the ruthless workings of nature. As a result, we continue to keep alive and to breed the unfit. Electrical science has revealed to us the true nature of light, has provided us with innumerable appliances and instruments of precision, and has thereby vastly added to the exactness of our knowledge. The harness of waterfalls is the most economical method known for drawing energy from the sun. The history of science shows that theories are perishable. With every new truth that is revealed, we get a better understanding of nature, and our conceptions and views are modified. I do not think you can name many great inventions that have been made by married men. Our virtues and our failings are inseparable, like force and matter. When they separate, man is no more. Today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation, and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. In the 21st century, the robot will take the place which slave labor occupied in ancient civilization. The human being is a self-propelled automaton entirely under the control of external influences. Willful and predetermined though they appear, his actions are governed not from within, but from without. He is like a float tossed about by the waves of a turbulent sea. The spread of civilization may be likened to a fire. First, a feeble spark, next a flickering flame, then a mighty blaze, ever increasing in speed and power. It seems that I have always been ahead of my time. I had to wait 19 years before Niagara was harnessed by my system, 15 years before the basic inventions for wireless which I gave to the world in 1893 were applied universally. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. The universal utilization of water power and its long-distance transmission will supply every household with cheap power and will dispense with the necessity of burning fuel, the struggle for existence being lessened. There should be development along ideal rather than material lines. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. I see it all perfectly. There are two possible situations. One can either do this or that. My honest opinion and my friendly advice is this: do it or do not do it, you will regret both. People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. Boredom is the root of all evil, the despairing refusal to be oneself. Listen to the cry of a woman in labor, the hour of giving birth. Look at the dying man's struggle at his last extremity. And then tell me whether something that begins and ends thus could be intended for enjoyment. What is a poet? An unhappy person who conceals profound anguish in his heart, but whose lips are so formed that as sighs and cries pass over them, they sound like beautiful music. God creates out of nothing. Wonderful, you say. Yes, to be sure. But he does what is still more wonderful. He makes saints out of sinners. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. The truth is a snare. You cannot have it without being caught. You cannot have the truth in such a way that you catch it, but only in such a way that it catches you. Marriage brings one into fatal connection with custom and tradition. And traditions and customs are like the wind and weather, altogether incalculable. A man who as a physical being is always turned toward the outside, thinking that his happiness lies outside him, finally turns inward and discovers that the source is within him. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. The highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but, if one will, are to be lived. Faith is the highest passion in a human being. Many in every generation may not come that far, but none comes further. People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. It belongs to the imperfection, everything human, that man can only attain his desire by passing through its opposite. How absurd men are! They never use the liberties they have. They demand those they do not have. They have freedom of thought. They demand freedom of speech. People commonly travel the world over to see rivers and mountains, new stars, garish birds, freak fish, grotesque breeds of human. They fall into an animal stupor that gapes at existence, and they think they have seen something. Since my earliest childhood, a barb of sorrow has lodged in my heart. As long as it stays, I am ironic. If it is pulled out, I shall die. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Even happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness, and the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It is far better take things as they come along with patience and equanimity. The health theme and us not torture others. Generally, it is the tortured who turn into torturers. As far as we can discern, the sole purpose of human existence is to kindle a light in the darkness of mere being. One looks back with appreciation to the brilliant teachers, but with gratitude to those who touch our human feelings. The curriculum is so much necessary raw material, but warmth is the vital element for the growing plant and for the soul of the child. The word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. The pendulum of the mind alternates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. There is no such thing as a pure introvert or extrovert. Such a person would be in the lunatic asylum. A particularly beautiful woman is a source of terror. As a rule, a beautiful woman is a terrible disappointment. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Where love rules, there is no will to power. And where power predominates, their love is lacking. The one is the shadow of the other. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. We are born at a given moment, in a given place. Like vintage years of wine, We have the qualities of the year and of the season of which we are born. Astrology does not lay claim to anything more. Through pride we are ever deceiving ourselves. But deep down below the surface of the average conscience is still, small voice says to us, something is out of tune. If there is anything that we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could better be changed in ourselves. The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved but only outgrown. The collective unconscious consists of the sum of the instincts and their correlates, the archetypes. Just as everybody possesses instincts, so he also possesses a stock of archetypal images. We shall probably get nearest to the truth if we think of the conscious and personal psyche as resting upon the broad basis of an inherited and universal psychic disposition which is as such unconscious, and that our personal psyche bears the same relation to the collective psyche as the individual to society. Dreams are the guiding words of the soul. Why should I henceforth not love my dreams and not make their riddling images into objects of my daily consideration? There is a providence that protects idiots, drunkards, children, and the United States of America. The great questions of the day will not be settled by means of speeches and majority decisions, but by iron and blood. Be polite. Write diplomatically. Even in a declaration of war, one observes the rules of politeness. A government must not waver once it has chosen its course. It must not look to the left or right, but go forward. A statesman must wait until he hears the steps of God sounding through events, then leap up and grasp the hem of his garment. All treaties between great states cease to be binding when they come in conflict with the struggle for existence. With a gentleman I am always a gentleman and a half, and with a fraud I'd rather be a fraud and a half. Anyone who has ever looked into the glazed eyes of a soldier dying on the battlefield will think hard before starting a war. When you say you agree to a thing in principle, you mean that you have not the slightest intention of carrying it out in practice. When a man says he approves of something in principle, it means he hasn't the slightest intention of carrying it out in practice. Politics is not an exact science. Politics is the art of the next best. Laws are like sausages. It is better not to see them being made. The main thing is to make history, not to write it. Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. Progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. I learned long ago never to wrestle with a pig. You get dirty, and besides, the pig likes it. A happy family is but an earlier heaven. Man can climb to the highest summits, but he cannot dwell there long. A government that robs Peter to pay Paul can always depend on the support of Paul. A fool's brain digests philosophy into folly, science into superstition, and art into pedantry, hence university education. We are made wise not by the recollection of our past, but by the responsibility for our future. better keep yourself clean and bright. You are the window through which you must see the world. Love is a gross exaggeration of the difference between one person and everybody else. We have no more right to consume happiness without producing it than to consume wealth without producing it. No man ever believes that the Bible means what it says. He is always convinced that it says what he means. The liar's punishment is not in the least that he is not believed, but that he cannot believe anyone else. Power does not corrupt men. Fools, however, if they get into a position of power, corrupt power. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing. Imagination is the beginning of creation. You imagine what you desire. You will what you imagine, and at last you create what you will. Marriage is an alliance entered into by a man who can't sleep with the window shut, and a woman who can't sleep with the window open. History repeats itself, and the unexpected always happens. How incapable must man be of learning from experience? The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. The worst sin toward our fellow creatures is not to hate them, but to be indifferent to them. That's the essence of inhumanity. Clever and attractive women do not want to vote. They are willing to let men govern as long as they govern men. It is dangerous to be sincere unless you are also stupid. A friendship founded on business is better than a business founded on friendship. I have ways of making money that you know nothing of. Do you know the only thing that gives me pleasure? It's to see my dividends coming in. The most important thing for a young man is to establish a credit, a reputation, character. There is nothing in this world that can compare with the Christian fellowship. Nothing that can satisfy but Christ. Singleness of purpose is one of the chief essentials for success in life, no matter what may be one's aim. I know of nothing more despicable and pathetic than a man who devotes all the hours of the waking day to the making of money for money's sake. Every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity, an obligation, every possession, a duty. The Sunday school has been of help to me, greater perhaps than any other force in my Christian life. And I can ask no better things for you than that you, and all that shall come after you in this great band of workers for Christ, shall receive the same measure of blessedness which I have been permitted to have. Don't blame the marketing department. The buck stops with the chief executive. I would rather earn 1% off of 100 people's efforts than 100% of my own efforts. You want to succeed, you should strike out on new paths, rather than travel the worn paths of accepted success. I do not think that there is any other quality so essential to success of any kind as the quality of perseverance. It overcomes almost everything, even nature. Good leadership consists of showing average people how to do the work of superior people. The ability to deal with people is as purchasable a commodity as sugar or coffee, and I will pay more for that ability than for any other under the sun. I believe in the dignity of labor, whether with head or hand, that the world owes no man a living, but that it owes every man an opportunity to make a living. I believe that every right implies a responsibility, every opportunity, an obligation, every possession, a duty. Charity is injurious unless it helps the recipient to become independent of it. Good management consists in showing average people how to do the work of superior people. And we are never too old to study the Bible. Each time the lessons are studied comes some new meaning, some new thought which will make us better. We can never learn too much of His will towards us, too much of His messages and His advice. The Bible is His Word, and its study gives at once the foundation for our faith and an inspiration to battle onward in the fight against the tempter. Next to doing the right thing, the most important thing is to let people know you are doing the right thing. There is no hunting like the hunting of man, and those who have hunted armed men long enough and liked it never care for anything else thereafter. There is no lonelier man in death, except the suicide, than that man who has lived many years with a good wife and then outlived her. If two people love each other, there can be no happy end to it. I love sleep. My life has the tendency to fall apart when I'm awake. You know. There is nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. I like to listen. I have learned a great deal from listening carefully. Most people never listen. The world is a fine place and worth the fighting for, and I hate very much to leave it. Never think that war, no matter how necessary, nor how justified, is not a crime. Madame, all stories, if continued far enough, end in death, and he is no true storyteller who would keep that from you. You are lucky enough to have lived in Paris as a young man. Then wherever you go for the rest of your life, it stays with you. For Paris is a movable feast. I learned never to empty the well of my writing, but always to stop when there was still something there in the deep part of the well, and let it refill at night from the springs that fed it. About morals, I know only that what is moral is what you feel good after, and what is immoral is what you feel bad after. When you have shot one bird flying, you have shot all birds flying. They are all different, and they fly in different ways, but the sensation is the same, and the last one is as good as the first. I wake up in the morning and my mind starts making sentences, and I have to get rid of them, fast talk them, or write them down. To be a successful father, there's one absolute rule. When you have a kid, don't look at it for the first 2 years. My aim is to put down on paper what I see and what I feel in the best and simplest way. For a true writer, each book should be a new beginning where he tries again for something that is beyond attainment. He should always try for something that has never been done or that others have tried and failed. Then sometimes, with great luck, he will succeed. Always do sober what you said you do drunk. That will teach you to keep your mouth shut. When you go to war as a boy, you have a great illusion of immortality, other people get killed, not you. Then, when you are badly wounded the first time, you lose that illusion, and you know it can happen to you. There is nothing noble in being superior to your fellow men. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self. The first panacea for a mismanaged nation is inflation of the currency. The second is war. Both bring a temporary prosperity. Both bring a permanent ruin. But both are the refuge of political and economic opportunists. Every man's life ends the same way. It is only the details of how he lived and how he died that distinguish one man from another. What is moral is what you feel good after, and what is immoral is what you feel bad after. If you have a success, you have it for the wrong reasons. If you become popular, it is always because of the worst aspects of your work. The only thing that could spoil a day was people. People were always the limiters of happiness, except for the very few that were as good as spring itself. I am the wisest man alive, for I know one thing, and that is that I know nothing. I know that I am intelligent, because I know that I know nothing. To know is to know that you know nothing. That is the meaning of true knowledge. True wisdom comes to each of us when we realize how little we understand about life, ourselves, and the world around us. Once made equal to man, woman becomes his superior. The greatest way to live with honor in this world is to be what we pretend to be. Worthless people live only to eat and drink. People of worth eat and drink only to live. False words are not only evil in themselves, but they infect the soul with evil. If all misfortunes were laid in one common heap whence every one must take an equal portion, most people would be contented to take their own and depart. I decided that it was not wisdom that enabled poets to write their poetry, but a kind of instinct or inspiration, such as you find in seers and prophets who deliver all their sublime messages without knowing in the least what they mean. Our prayers should be for blessings in general, for God knows best what is good for us. Where there is reverence, there is fear. But there is not reverence everywhere that there is fear, because fear presumably has a wider extension than reverence. If a man is proud of his wealth, he should not be praised until it is known how he employs it. One who is injured ought not to return the injury, for on no account can it be right to do an injustice. And it is not right to return an injury, or to do evil to any man, however much we have suffered from him. He is richest who is content with the least, for content is the wealth of nature. By all means, marry. You get a good wife, you'll become happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher. Death may be the greatest of all human blessings. Be slow to fall into friendship, but when thou art in, continue firm and constant. All men's souls are immortal, but the souls of the righteous are immortal and divine. Employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall gain easily what others have labored hard for. A system of morality which is based on relative emotional values is a mere illusion, a thoroughly vulgar conception which has nothing sound in it and nothing true. He is a man of courage who does not run away, but remains at his post and fights against the enemy. No evil can happen to a good man, either in life or after death. He and his are not neglected by the gods. Ordinary people seem not to realize that those who really apply themselves in the right way to philosophy are directly and of their own accord preparing themselves for dying and death. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see. The doctor sees all the weakness of mankind, the lawyer all the wickedness, the theologian all the stupidity. Each day is a little life, every waking and rising a little birth, every fresh morning a little youth, every going to rest and sleep a little death. Satisfaction consists in freedom from pain, which is the positive element of life. The greatest of follies is to sacrifice health for any other kind of happiness. The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him. Great men are like eagles, and build their nest on some lofty solitude. The 2 enemies of human happiness are pain and boredom. I've never known any trouble that an hour's reading didn't assuage. The first 40 years of life give us the text. The next 30 supply the commentary on it. Nature shows that with the growth of intelligence comes increased capacity for pain, and it is only with the highest degree of intelligence that suffering reaches its supreme point. Sleep is the interest we have to pay on the capital which is called in at death. And the higher the rate of interest and the more regularly it is paid, the further the date of redemption is postponed. Opinion is like a pendulum and obeys the same law. If it goes past the center of gravity on one side, it must go a like distance on the other. And it is only after a certain time that it finds the true point at which it can remain at rest. Reading is equivalent to thinking with someone else's head instead of with one's own. A man's delight in looking forward to and hoping for some particular satisfaction is a part of the pleasure flowing out of it, enjoyed in advance. But this is afterward deducted, for the more we look forward to anything, the less we enjoy it when it comes. Every possession and every happiness is but lent by chance for an uncertain time, and may therefore be demanded back the next hour. It is only a man's own fundamental thoughts that have truth and life in them, for it is these that he really and completely understands. To read the thoughts of others is like taking the remains of someone else's meal, like putting on the discarded clothes of a stranger. In our monogamous part of the world, to marry means to have one's rights and double one's duties. Great minds are related to the brief span of time during which they live, as great buildings are to a little square in which they stand. You cannot see them in all their magnitude because you are standing too close to them. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. They tell us that suicide is the greatest piece of cowardice, that suicide is wrong. when it is quite obvious that there is nothing in the world to which every man has a more unassailable title than to his own life and person. Money is human happiness in the abstract. He then, who is no longer capable of enjoying human happiness in the concrete, devotes himself utterly to money. Wealth is like seawater. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. And the same is true of fame. Religion is the masterpiece of the art of animal training, for it trains people as to how they shall think. There is no doubt that life is given us, not to be enjoyed, but to be overcome, to be got over. With people of limited ability, modesty is merely honesty, but with those who possess great talent, it is hypocrisy. The discovery of truth is prevented more effectively, not by the false appearance things present and which mislead into error, not directly by weakness of the reasoning powers, but by preconceived opinion, by prejudice. Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them in. But as a rule, the purchase of books is mistaken for the appropriation of their contents. Willpower is to the mind like a strong blind man who carries on his shoulders a lame man who can see. Suffering by nature or chance never seems so painful as suffering inflicted on us by the arbitrary will of another. The wise have always said the same things, and fools, who are the majority, have always done just the opposite. A man's face as a rule says more, and more interesting things, than his mouth, for it is a compendium of everything his mouth will ever say, in that it is the monogram of all this man's thoughts and aspirations. Honor means that a man is not exceptional. Fame, that he is. Fame is something which must be won. Honor, only something which must not be lost. Boredom is just the reverse side of fascination. Both depend on being outside rather than inside a situation, and one leads to the other. As the biggest library, if it is in disorder, is not as useful as a small but well-arranged one. So you may accumulate a vast amount of knowledge, but it will be of far less value than a much smaller amount if you have not thought it over for yourself. Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able, but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? Do not spoil what you have by desiring what you have not. Self-sufficiency is the greatest of all wealth. A happy and eternal being has no trouble himself and brings no trouble upon any other being. Hence he is exempt from movements of anger and partiality, for every such movement implies weakness. We should look for someone to eat and drink with before looking for something to eat and drink. Freedom is the greatest fruit of self-sufficiency. The gods listen to the prayers of men. All men would quickly have perished, for they are forever praying for evil against one another. It is not the pretended, but the real pursuit of philosophy that is needed, for we do not need the appearance of good health, but to enjoy it in truth. Happiness is man's greatest aim in life. Tranquility and rationality are the cornerstones of happiness. To make a man happy, and not unto his riches, but take away from his desires. Of all the means which wisdom acquires to ensure happiness throughout the whole of life, by far the most important is friendship. Not what we have, but what we enjoy, constitutes our abundance. He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing. To eat and drink without a friend is to devour like the lion and the wolf. Chance seldom interferes with the wise man. His greatest and highest interests have been, are, and will be directed by reason throughout his whole life. Of our desires, some are natural and necessary, others are natural but not necessary, and others are neither natural nor necessary, but are due to groundless opinion. Pleasure is the first good. It is the beginning of every choice and every aversion. It is the absence of pain in the body and of troubles in the soul. Luxurious food and drinks in no way protect you from harm. Wealth beyond what is natural is no more used than an overflowing container. Real value is not generated by theaters and baths, perfumes or ointments, but by philosophy. No pleasure is itself a bad thing, but the things that produce some kinds of pleasure bring along with them unpleasantness that is much greater than the pleasure itself. Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right, and stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other. I am a slow walker, but I never walk back. Be sure you put your feet in the right place, then stand firm. Abraham Lincoln. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. And that's my religion. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can. And I mean to keep on doing so until the end. My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure. The probability that we may fail in the struggle ought not to deter us from the support of a cause we believe to be just. No matter how much cats fight, there always seem to be plenty of kittens. We the people are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who pervert the Constitution. The shepherd drives the wolf from the sheep's throat, for which the sheep thanks the shepherd as his liberator, while the wolf denounces him for the same act as the destroyer of liberty. Plainly, the sheep and the wolf are not agreed upon a definition of liberty. I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives. I like to see a man live so that his place will be proud of him. Discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. As a peacemaker, the lawyer has superior opportunity of being a good man. There will still be business enough. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. Labor is prior to, and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor, and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital, and deserves much the higher consideration. This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or exercise their revolutionary right to overthrow it. The great American people will only keep their temper on both sides of the line. The troubles will come to an end, and the question which now distracts the country will be settled just as surely as all other difficulties of like character which have originated in this government have been adjusted. Let's have faith that right makes might, and in that faith let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. We're all going to die, all of us. What a circus. That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. We are terrorized and flattened by trivialities. We are eaten up by nothing. I don't like the clean-shaven boy with the necktie and the good job. I like desperate men, men with broken teeth and broken minds and broken ways. They interest me. They are full of surprises and explosions. We are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us. The male, for all his bravado and exploration, is the loyal one, the one who generally feels love. The female is skilled at betrayal and torture and damnation. Censorship is the tool of those who have the need to hide actualities from themselves and from others. Their fear is only their inability to face what is real, and I can't vent any anger against them. I only feel this appalling sadness. Somewhere in their upbringing, they were shielded against the total facts of our existence. Having a bunch of cats around is good. If you're feeling bad, you just look at the cats. You'll feel better because they know that everything is just as it is. There's nothing to get excited about. They just know. They are saviors. I can relax with bums because I am a bum. I don't like laws, morals, religions, rules. I don't like to be shaped by society. The difference between a democracy and a dictatorship is that in a democracy, you vote first and take orders later. In a dictatorship, you don't have to waste your time voting. There are women who can make you feel more with their bodies and their souls. But these are the exact women who will turn the knife into you right in front of the crowd. Of course, I expect this, but the knife still cuts. Even though I write about the human race, the further away from them, the better I feel. 2 miles is great. 2,000 miles is beautiful. If I write badly about blacks, homosexuals, and women, it is because of these who I met were that. There are many bad dogs, bad censorship. There are even bad white males. Only, when you write about bad white males, they don't complain about it. And need I say that there are good blacks, good homosexuals, and good women? Early on, when I was quite young and going from job to job, I was foolish enough to sometimes speak to my fellow workers. Hey, the boss can come in here at any moment and lay all of us off, just like that. Don't you realize that? They would just look at me. I was posing something that they didn't want to enter their minds. When everything works best, it's not because you chose writing, but because writing chose you. It's when you're mad with it. It's when it's stuffed in your ears, your nostrils, under your fingernails. It's when there's no hope but that. The more cats you have, the longer you live. If you have 100 cats, you'll live 10 times longer than if you have 10. Someday this will be discovered, and people will have 1,000 cats and live forever. It's truly ridiculous. The female loves to play man against man, and if she is in a position to do it, there is not one who will resist. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. We should consider every day lost on which we have not danced at least once, and we should call every truth false which was not accompanied by at least one laugh. The true man wants two things, danger and play. For that reason he wants woman as the most dangerous plaything. The man of knowledge must be able not only to love his enemies, but also to hate his friends. We love life, not because we are used to living, but because we are used to loving. When marrying, ask yourself this question. Do you believe that you will be able to converse well with this person into your old age? Everything else in marriage is transitory. Those who cannot understand how to put their thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of debate. There is always some madness in love, but there is also always some reason in madness. Friedrich Nietzsche: it is impossible to suffer without making someone pay for it. Every complaint already contains revenge. Friedrich Nietzsche. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. Yet his shadow still looms. How shall we comfort ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? The most common lie is that which one lies to himself. Lying to others is relatively an exception. Not necessity, not desire, no. The love of power is the demon of men. Let them have everything: health, food, a place to live, entertainment. They are and remain unhappy and low-spirited. For the demon waits and waits and will be satisfied. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you. All things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth. He who would learn to fly one day must first learn to stand and walk and run and climb and dance. One cannot fly into flying. You have your way. I have my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. If you want a thing done well, do it yourself. You wish to be a success in the world, promise everything, deliver nothing. Men are more easily governed through their vices than through their virtues. Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever. Our age is like love. It must have hope for nourishment. The strong man is the one who is able to intercept at will the communication between the senses and the mind. There are only two forces in the world, the sword and the spirit. In the long run, the sword will always be conquered by the spirit. Power is my mistress. I have worked too hard at her conquest to allow anyone to take her away from me. Take time to deliberate, but when the time for action has arrived, stop thinking and going. One must change one's tactics every 10 years if one wishes to maintain one's superiority. Doctors will have more lives to answer for in the next world than even we generals. Death is nothing, but to live defeated and inglorious is to die daily. The battlefield is a scene of constant chaos. The winner will be the one who controls that chaos, both his own and the enemy's. You must not fight too often with one enemy, or you will teach him all your art of war. Great ambition is the passion of a great character. Those endowed with it may perform very good or very bad acts. All depends on the principles which direct them. To do all that one is able to do is to be a man. To do all that one would like to do is to be a god. The first virtue in a soldier is endurance of fatigue. Courage is only the second virtue. History is the version of past events that people have decided to agree upon. The people to fear are not those who disagree with you, but those who disagree with you and are too cowardly to let you know. If they want peace, nations should avoid the pinpricks that precede cannon shots. Be at war with your vices, at peace with your neighbors, and let every new year find you a better man. Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. A good conscience is a continual Christmas. Dost thou love life? Then do not squander time, for that is the stuff life is made of. In this world, nothing can be said to be certain, except death and taxes. If all printers were determined not to print anything till they were sure it would offend nobody, there would be very little printed. The Constitution only gives people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it yourself. I am for doing good to the poor, but I differ in opinion about the means. I think the best way of doing good to the poor is not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it. I wake up every morning at 9 and grab for the morning paper. Then I look at the obituary page. If my name is not on it, I get up. To succeed, jump as quickly at opportunities as you do at conclusions. Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech. As we enjoy great advantages from the inventions of others, we should be glad of an opportunity to serve others by any invention of ours, and this we should do freely and generously. Money has never made men happy, nor will it. There is nothing in its nature to produce happiness. The more of it one has, the more one wants. Experience keeps a dear school, but fools will learn in no other. A false friend and a shadow attend only while the sun shines. A house is not a home unless it contains food and fire for the mind as well as the body. Remember not only to say the right thing in the right place, but far more difficult still, to leave and said the wrong thing at the tempting moment. Work as if you were to live 100 years. Pray as if you were to die tomorrow. There are 3 faithful friends: an old wife, an old dog, and ready money. The life of the dead is placed in the memory of the living. Friendship improves happiness and abates misery by the doubling of our joy and the dividing of our grief. More law, less justice. The enemy is within the gates. It is with our own luxury, our own folly, our own criminality that we have to contend. Nothing is more noble, nothing more venerable than fidelity. Faithfulness and truth are the most sacred excellences and endowments of the human mind. I prefer tongue-tied knowledge to ignorant loquacity. Gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all the others. Live as brave men. And if fortune is adverse, front its blows with brave hearts. The wise are instructed by reason, average minds by experience, the stupid by necessity, and the brute by instinct. It is not by muscle, speed, or physical dexterity that great things are achieved, but by reflection, force of character, and judgment. The harvest of old age is the recollection and abundance of blessing previously secure. Let us not listen to those who think we ought to be angry with our enemies, and who believe this to be great and manly. Nothing is so praiseworthy, nothing so clearly shows a great and noble soul as clemency and readiness to forgive. It is foolish to tear one's hair in grief, as though sorrow would be made less by baldness. If you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. The higher we are placed, the more humbly we should walk. Silence is one of the great arts of conversation. It is the peculiar quality of a fool to perceive the faults of others and to forget his own. There is nothing so absurd that some philosopher has not already said it. To be ignorant of what occurred before you were born is to remain always a child. You pursue good with labor. The labor passes away, but the good remains. If you pursue evil with pleasure, the pleasure passes away and the evil remains. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. Men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, for heavy ones they cannot. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Men ought either to be indulged or utterly destroyed. For if you merely offend them, they take vengeance. But if you injure them greatly, they are unable to retaliate. So that the injury done to a man ought to be such that vengeance cannot be feared. There are 3 kinds of intelligence. One kind understands things for itself. The other appreciates what others can understand. The third understands neither for itself nor through others. This first kind is excellent, the second good, and the third kind useless. War should be the only study of a prince. He should consider peace only as a breathing time, which gives him leisure to contrive, and furnishes as ability to execute military plans. Men are so simple and so much inclined to obey immediate needs that a deceiver will never lack victims for his deceptions. A son can bear with equanimity the loss of his father, but the loss of his inheritance may drive him to despair. If an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. There is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. It is necessary for him who lays out a state and arranges laws for it to presuppose that all men are evil and that they are always going to act according to the wickedness of their spirits whenever they have free scope. God is not willing to do everything, and thus take away our free will and that share of glory which belongs to us. A return to first principles in a republic is sometimes caused by the simple virtues of one man. His good example has such an influence that the good men strive to imitate him, and the wicked are ashamed to lead a life so contrary to his example. The wish to acquire more is admittedly a very natural and common thing. And when men succeed in this, they are always praised rather than condemned. But when they lack the ability to do so and yet want to acquire more at all costs, they deserve condemnation for their mistakes. Since it is difficult to join them together, it is safer to be feared than to be loved when one of the two must be lacking. To understand the nature of the people, one must be a prince, and to understand the nature of the prince, one must be of the people. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. It's not because things are difficult that we dare not venture. It's because we dare not venture that they are difficult. The bravest sight in the world is to see a great man struggling against adversity. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. A gift consists not in what is done or given, but in the intention of the giver or doer. A physician is not angry at the intemperance of a mad patient, nor does he take it ill to be railed at by a man in fever. Just so should a wise man treat all mankind, as a physician does his patient, and look upon them only as sick and extravagant. Expecting is the greatest impediment to living. In anticipation of tomorrow, it loses today. There are more things to alarm us than to harm us, and we suffer more often in apprehension than reality. Nothing is so wretched or foolish as to anticipate misfortunes. What madness is it to be expecting evil before it comes? Behold a worthy sight, to which the God, turning his attention to his own work, may direct his gaze. Behold an equal thing, worthy of a God, a brave man matched in conflict with evil fortune. Religion is regarded by the common people as true, by the wise as false, and by the rulers as useful. It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult. Everywhere is nowhere. When a person spends all his time in foreign travel, he ends by having many acquaintances, but no friends. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Life is the fire that burns and the sun that gives light. Life is the wind and the rain and the thunder in the sky. Life is matter and is earth, what is and what is not, and what beyond is in eternity. Our plans miscarry because they have no aim. When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. No evil propensity of the human heart is so powerful that it may not be subdued by discipline. The ideal man bears the accidents of life with dignity and grace, making the best of circumstances. It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Anybody can become angry, that is easy. But to be angry with the right person and to the right degree and at the right time and for the right purpose and in the right way, that is not within everybody's power and is not easy. I count him braver who overcomes his desires than him who conquers his enemies. For the hardest victory is over self. He who is unable to live in society, or who has no need because he is sufficient for himself, must be either a beast or a god. Courage is the first of human qualities because it is the quality which guarantees the others. Mothers are fonder than fathers of their children because they are more certain they are their own. Suffering becomes beautiful when anyone bears great calamities with cheerfulness, not through insensibility but through greatness of mind. Moral excellence comes about as a result of habit. We become just by doing just acts, temperate by doing temperate acts, brave by doing brave acts. A tyrant must put on the appearance of uncommon devotion to religion. Subjects are less apprehensive of illegal treatment from a ruler whom they consider God-fearing and pious. On the other hand, they do less easily move against him, believing that he has the gods on his side. You will never do anything in this world without courage. It is the greatest quality of the mind next to honor. The aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. At his best, man is the noblest of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst. Republics decline into democracies, and democracies degenerate into despotisms. The ultimate value of life depends upon awareness and the power of contemplation rather than upon mere survival. Jealousy is both reasonable and belongs to reasonable men, while envy is base and belongs to the base. For the one makes himself get good things by jealousy, while the other does not allow his neighbor to have them through envy. It is just that we should be grateful, not only to those with whose views we may agree, but also to those who have expressed more superficial views. For these also contributed something, by developing before us the powers of thought. For one swallow does not make a summer, nor does one day. And so too one day, or a short time, does not make a man blessed and happy. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I am kind to everyone, but when someone is unkind to me, weak is not what you are going to remember about me. You can go a long way with a smile. You can go a lot farther with a smile and a gun. Be careful who you call your friends. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. You can get much further with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone. When I sell liquor, it's bootlegging. When my patrons serve it on a silver tray on Lakeshore Drive, it's hospitality. You can get more with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone. Do not mistake my kindness for weakness. I am kind to everyone. But if you are unkind to me, it will not be weakness that you will remember me for. You can get much farther with a kind word and a gun than you can with a kind word alone. Capitalists believe they can take everything at the table as belonging to them. Capitalism is the legitimate racket of the ruling class. Hell must be a pretty swell spot, because the guys that invented religion have sure been trying hard to keep everybody else out. Find the toughest guy in the room, embrace him like a brother, and then slam his head against the wall. You'll accomplish more with a kind word and a gun than you will with a kind word alone. Do not mistake my kindness for weakness, my calmness for ignorance or acceptance. Inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. Take a chance. All life is a chance. The man who goes farthest is generally the one who is willing to do and dare. One of the most tragic things I know about human nature is that all of us tend to put off living. We are all dreaming of some magical rose garden over the horizon instead of enjoying the roses that are blooming outside our windows today. First ask yourself, what is the worst that can happen? Then prepare to accept it. Then proceed to improve on the worst. Flaming enthusiasm, backed up by horse sense and persistence, is the quality that most frequently makes for success. Don't be afraid to give your best to what seemingly are small jobs. Every time you conquer one, it makes you that much stronger. If you do the little jobs well, the big ones will tend to take care of themselves. If you believe in what you are doing, then let nothing hold you up in your work. Much of the best work of the world has been done against seeming impossibilities. The thing is to get the work done. There are always 3 speeches for every one you actually gave: the one you practiced, the one you gave, and the one you wish you gave. Are you bored with life? Then throw yourself into some work you believe in with all your heart. Live for it, die for it, and you will find happiness that you had thought could never be yours. Person who goes farthest is generally the one who is willing to do and dare. The sure thing boat never gets far from shore. There is only one way to get anybody to do anything, and that is by making the other person want to do it. There are 4 ways, and only 4 ways, in which we have contact with the world. We are evaluated and classified by these 4 contacts: what we do, how we look, what we say, and how we say it. Remember, happiness doesn't depend upon who you are or what you have. It depends solely on what you think. The essence of all art is to have pleasure in giving pleasure. If only the people who worry about their liabilities would think about the riches they do possess, they would stop worrying. The ideas I stand for are not mine. I borrowed them from Socrates. I swiped them from Chesterfield. I stole them from Jesus. And I put them in a book. If you don't like the rules, whose would you use? Men of age object too much, consult too long, adventure too little, repent too soon, and seldom drive business home to the full period, but content themselves with a mediocrity of success. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Education is the ability to listen to almost anything without losing your temper or your self-confidence. Poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. By working faithfully 8 hours a day, you may eventually get to be boss and work 12 hours a day. The figure a poem makes. It begins in delight and ends in wisdom. In a clarification of life, not necessarily a great clarification, such as sects and cults are founded on, but in a momentary stay against confusion. A poem begins as a lump in the throat, a sense of wrong, a homesickness, a lovesickness. The greatest thing in family life is to take a hint when a hint is intended and not to take a hint when a hint isn't intended. I never dared to be radical when young for fear it would make me conservative when old. Most of the change we think we see in life is due to truths being in and out of favor. Poets are like baseball pitchers. Both have their moments. The intervals are the tough things. Two such as you with such a master speed cannot be parted nor be swept away from one another once you are agreed that life is only life forevermore, together wing to wing and oar to oar. The strongest and most effective force in guaranteeing the long-term maintenance of power is not violence in all the forms deployed by the dominant to control the dominated, but consent in all the forms in which the dominated acquiesce in their own domination. A diplomat is a man who always remembers a woman's birthday but never remembers her age. Half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half who have nothing to say and keep on saying it. A mother takes 20 years to make a man of her boy, and another woman makes a fool of him in 20 minutes. The brain is a wonderful organ. It starts working the moment you get up in the morning and does not stop until you get into the office. We dance round in a ring and suppose, but the secret sits in the middle and knows. There never was any heart truly great and generous that was not also tender and compassionate. There are two kinds of teachers. The kind that fill you with so much quail shot that you can't move, and the kind that just gives you a little prod behind and you jump to the skies. When the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers. There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask, and he will tell you the truth. Children begin by loving their parents. After a time, they judge them. Rarely, if ever, do they forgive them. All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That's his. Education is an admirable thing, but it is well to remember from time to time that nothing that is worth knowing can be taught. Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives a mimicry, their passions a quotation. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Beauty is the only thing that time cannot harm. Philosophies fall away like sand, creeds follow one another. But what is beautiful is a joy for all seasons, a possession for all eternity. It is better to be beautiful than to be good, but It is better to be good than to be ugly. America is the only country that went from barbarism to decadence without civilization in between. I choose my friends for their good looks, my acquaintances for their good characters, and my enemies for their intellects. A man cannot be too careful in the choice of his enemies. How can a woman be expected to be happy with a man who insists on treating her as if she were a perfectly normal human being? When I was young, I thought that money was the most important thing in life. Now that I am old, I know that it is. A dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. Between men and women there is no friendship possible. There is passion, enmity, worship, love, but no friendship. The only difference between the saint and the sinner is that every saint has a past, and every sinner has a future. To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. Perfection is achieved, not when there's nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. You want to build a ship. Don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. A designer knows he has achieved perfection not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. The meaning of things lies not in the things themselves, but in our attitude towards them. I have no right, by anything I do or say, to demean a human being in his own eyes. What matters is not what I think of him. It is what he thinks of himself. To undermine a man's self-respect is a sin. Perfection is finally attained not when there is no longer anything to add, but when there is no longer anything to take away. When a body has been stripped down to its nakedness. He who has gone, so we but cherish his memory, abides with us, more potent, nay, more present than the living man. It is in the compelling zest of high adventure and of victory, and in creative action, that man finds his supreme joys. No single event can awaken within us a stranger totally unknown to us. To live is to be slowly born. It would be a bit too easy if we could go about borrowing ready-made souls. One can be a brother only in something, where there is no tie that binds men. Men are not united but merely lined up. Whoever loves above all the approach of love will never know the joy of attaining it. Only he can understand what a farm is, what a country is, who shall have sacrificed part of himself to his farm or country, fought to save it, struggled to make it beautiful. Only then will the love of farm or country fill his heart. Charity never humiliated him who profited from it, nor ever bound him by the chains of gratitude, since it was not to him but to God that the gift was made. Once men are caught up in an event, they cease to be afraid. Only the unknown frightens men. Love does not consist in gazing at each other, but in looking outward together in the same direction. A rock pile ceases to be a rock pile the moment a single man contemplates it, bearing within him the image of a cathedral. And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly, What is essential is invisible to the eye. The machine does not isolate man from the great problems of nature, but plunges him more deeply into them. Only the unknown frightens men, but once a man has faced the unknown, that terror becomes the known. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. To know what you know and what you do not know, that is true knowledge. Success depends upon previous preparation, and without such preparation, there is sure to be failure. If I am walking with two other men, each of them will serve as my teacher. I will pick out the good points of the one and imitate them, and the bad points of the other and correct them in myself. It is easy to hate and it is difficult to love. This is how the whole scheme of things works. All good things are difficult to achieve, and bad things are very easy to get. When it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, adjust the action steps. You think in terms of a year, plant a seed. If in terms of 10 years, plant trees. If in terms of 100 years, teach the people. He who learns but does not think is lost. He who thinks but does not learn is in great danger. The strength of a nation derives from the integrity of the home. Wisdom, compassion, and courage are the three universally recognized moral qualities of men. When you know a thing, to hold that you know it, and when you do not know a thing, to allow that you do not know it, this is knowledge. To practice 5 things under all circumstances constitutes perfect virtue. These 5 are gravity, generosity of soul, sincerity, earnestness, and kindness. They must often change. Who would be constant in happiness or wisdom? Virtuous people often revenge themselves for the constraints to which they submit by the boredom which they inspire. You look into your own heart, and you find nothing wrong there. What is there to worry about? What is there to fear? By 3 methods we may learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is noblest. Second, by imitation, which is easiest. And third, by experience, which is the bitterest. The will to win, the desire to succeed, the urge to reach your full potential. These are the keys that will unlock the door to personal excellence. Better a diamond with a flaw than a pebble without. Old age, believe me, is a good and pleasant thing. It is true you are gently shouldered off the stage, but then you are given such a comfortable front stall as spectator. The superior man thinks always of virtue. The common man thinks of comfort. Never contract friendship with a man that is not better than thyself. People sleep peaceably in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. If you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Those who abjure violence can do so only because others are committing violence on their behalf. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. As with the Christian religion, the worst advertisement for socialism is its adherents. Serious sport has nothing to do with fair play. It is bound up with hatred, jealousy, boastfulness, disregard of all rules, and sadistic pleasure in witnessing violence. In other words, it is war minus the shooting. If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. A family with the wrong members in control, that, perhaps, is as near as one can come to describing England in a phrase. What can you do against the lunatic who is more intelligent than yourself, who gives your arguments a fair hearing and then simply persists in his lunacy? The great enemy of clear language is insincerity. When there is a gap between one's real and one's declared aims, one turns, as it were, instinctively to long words and exhausted idioms, like a cuttlefish squirting outing. Probably the Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton, but the opening battles of all subsequent wars have been lost there. War against a foreign country only happens when the moneyed classes think they are going to profit from it. The essential act of war is destruction, not necessarily of human lives, but of the products of human labor. Whatever is funny is subversive. Every joke is ultimately a custard pie. A dirty joke is a sort of mental rebellion. I doubt whether classical education ever has been or can be successfully carried out without corporal punishment. Doublethink means the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously, and accepting both of them. We sleep safe in our beds because rough-minced and ready in the night to visit violence on those who would do us harm. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure win. If you're going through hell, keep going. Good, better, best. Never let it rest till your good is better and your better is best. Optimism is the faith that leads to achievement. Nothing can be done without hope and confidence. Quality is not an act, it is a habit. With the new day comes new strength and new thoughts. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into the visible. Consult not your fears, but your hopes and your dreams. Think not about your frustrations, but about your unfulfilled potential. Concern yourself not with what you tried and failed in, but with what it is still possible for you to do. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. You can't cross the sea merely by standing and staring at the water. What you get by achieving your goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. Problems are not stop signs, they are guidelines. The past cannot be changed. The future is yet in your power. You are never too old to set another goal or to dream a new dream. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. It always seems impossible until it's done. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. Ever tried? Ever failed? No matter. Try again. Fail again. Fail better. Do the difficult things while they are easy, and do the great things while they are small. A journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. A good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. The secret of getting ahead is getting started. Failure will never overtake me if my determination to succeed is strong enough. We should not give up, and we should not allow the problem to defeat us. Either you run the day or the day runs you. Well done is better than well said. Your talent is God's gift to you. What you do with it is your gift back to God. There is only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. Perseverance is not a long race. It is many short races, one after the other. Don't think, just do. The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time. Believe in yourself. Have faith in your abilities. Without a humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, you cannot be successful or happy. Life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. If you can dream it, you can do it. What you do today can improve all your tomorrows. Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. You can't expect to hit the jackpot if you don't put a few nickels in the machine. Never complain and never explain. Aim for the moon. If you miss, you may hit a star. We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. Things do not happen. Things are made to happen. Look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious. Only I can change my life. No one can do it for me. Be miserable or motivate yourself. Whatever has to be done, it's always your choice. I don't believe you have to be better than everybody else. I believe you have to be better than you ever thought you could be. Opportunity does not knock. It presents itself when you beat down the door. Change your life today. Don't gamble on the future. Act now, without delay. A creative man is motivated by the desire to achieve, not by the desire to beat others. March on, do not tarry. To go forward is to move toward perfection. March on, and fear not the thorns or the sharp stones on life's path. Leap, and the net will appear. Do not wait to strike till the iron is hot, but make it hot by striking. Act as if what you do makes a difference. It does. Do you want to know who you are? Don't ask. Act. Action will delineate and define you. Arriving at one goal is the starting point to another. If you want to conquer fear, don't sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy. I know where I'm going, and I know the truth. And I don't have to be what you want me to be. I'm free to be what I want. You just can't beat the person who never gives up. The first step towards success is taken when you refuse to be a captive of the environment in which you first find yourself. Motivation is the art of getting people to do what you want them to do because they want to do it. You must take action now that will move you towards your goals. Develop a sense of urgency in your life. If you ask me what I came into this life to do, I will tell you, I came to live out loud. Learn from the past, set vivid, detailed goals for the future, and live in the only moment of time over which you have any control, now. You simply have to put one foot in front of the other and keep going. Put blinders on and plow right ahead. No bird soars too high if he soars with his own wings. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby you can be the director of the opponent's fate. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. All men can see these tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory is evolved. To fight and conquer in all our battles is not supreme excellence. Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look on them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death. He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not, will be victorious. The art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of the enemy's not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him. Not on the chance of his not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable. A good commander is benevolent and unconcerned with fame. Confront them with annihilation, and they will then survive. Plunge them into a deadly situation, and they will then live. When people fall into danger, they are then able to strive for victory. The enlightened ruler is heedful, and the good general full of caution. The general who advances without coveting fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his country and do good service for his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. There has never been a protracted war from which a country has benefited. For to win 100 victories in 100 battles is not the acme of skill. To subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Hence the saying, if you know the enemy and you know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and you know earth, you may make your victory complete. When envoys are sent with compliments in their mouths, it is a sign that the enemy wishes for a truce. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight, even though the ruler forbid it. If fighting will not result in victory, then you must not fight even at the ruler's bidding. Know your enemy and know yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without disaster. The opportunity to secure ourselves against defeat lies in our own hands, but the opportunity of defeating the enemy is provided by the enemy himself. The general who wins the battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses makes but few calculations beforehand. To see victory only when it is within the ken of the common herd is not the acme of excellence. The quality of decision is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. Secret operations are essential in war. Upon them the army rallies to make its every move. Prohibit the taking of omens, and do away with superstitious doubts. Then, until death itself comes, no calamity need be feared. Thus it is that in war the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won, whereas he who is destined to defeat first fights and afterwards looks for victory. Of all those in the army close to the commander, none is more intimate than the secret agent. Of all rewards, none more liberal than those given to secret agents. Of all matters, none is more confidential than those relating to secret operations. Above all things, reverence yourself. Concern should drive us into action and not into depression. No man is free who cannot control himself. There is a good principle which created order, light, and man, and an evil principle which created chaos, darkness, and woman. Friends are as companions on a journey, who ought to aid each other to persevere in the road to a happier life. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. The oldest, shortest words yes and no are those which require the most thought. Above the cloud with its shadow is the star with its light. Above all things reverence thyself. It is better whether to be silent or to say things of more value than silence. Sooner throw a pearl at hazard than an idle or useless word. And do not say a little in many words, but a great deal in a few. Strength of mind rests in sobriety, for this keeps your reason unclouded by passion. Begin thus from the first act, and proceed. And, in conclusion, at the ill which thou hast done, be troubled, and rejoice for the good. The most momentous thing in human life is the art of winning the soul to good or evil. As soon as laws are necessary for men, they are no longer fit for freedom. Anger begins with folly and ends with repentance. Beings have a soul. Choose rather to be strong of soul than strong of body. No one is free who has not obtained the empire of himself. As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he will never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other.
Most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility.
Love and work, work and love, that's all there is. Being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. A civilization which leaves so large a number of its participants unsatisfied and drives them into revolt neither has nor deserves the prospect of a lasting existence. The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind. The first human who hurled an insult instead of a stone was the founder of civilization. The mind is like an iceberg. It floats with 1/7 of its bulk above water. Flowers are restful to look at. They have neither emotions nor conflicts. Whoever loves becomes humble. Those who love have, so to speak, pawned a part of their narcissism. The voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. What a distressing contrast there is between the radiant intelligence of the child and the feeble mentality of the average adult. What we call happiness in the strictest sense comes from the preferably sudden satisfaction of needs which have been dammed up to a high degree. Every normal person, in fact, is only normal on the average. His ego approximates to that of the psychotic in some part or other and to a greater or lesser extent. A man who has been the indisputable favorite of his mother keeps for life the feeling of a conqueror. Men are strong so long as they represent a strong idea. They become powerless when they oppose it. Man has, as it were, become a kind of prosthetic god. When he puts on all his auxiliary organs, he is truly magnificent. But those organs have not grown on him and they still give him much trouble at times. Civilized society is perpetually menaced with disintegration through this primary hostility of men towards one another. Obviously, one must hold oneself responsible for the evil impulses of one's dreams. In what other way can one deal with them, unless the content of the dream, rightly understood, is inspired by alien spirits? It is part of my own being. Neurotics complain of their illness, but they make the most of it. And when it comes to talking it away from them, they will defend it like a lioness her young. Just as a cautious businessman avoids investing all his capital in one concern, so wisdom would probably admonish us also not to anticipate all our happiness from one quarter alone. It is impossible to overlook the extent to which civilization is built upon a renunciation of instinct. The doctor should be opaque to his patients and, like a mirror, should show them nothing but what is shown to him. Civilization began the first time an angry person cast a word instead of a rock. I cannot think of any